What is up, shitbags? Welcome back.
Back at it.
Welcome back. There you go. See, you're always loud when you come in, but I like it. It's good. We got it great. What is up? We're back with episode number 7. Back with episode number 7. We're gonna get this all figured out. We're getting better each and every time. But welcome back, everybody. It's awesome. Again, like always, we start off. We thank everybody for listening, everybody for watching. It's just humbling and insane how much this is already gained traction. It's such a blast. It's such a blast to bring everybody on here and kind of use our platform to better only better ourselves, but bring on some good people and hear the feedback from everybody else. So yeah, got anything to add there, Brennan, loudly?
No, I just want to thank you guys for listening, and let's get this show boss on the road.
Now you're going in and out, man. You're going in and out, loud and quiet. We'll see if we figure it out. All right, but we got a couple things we want to get out of the way while Brennan gets his stuff figured out. First off, I mean, we try to thank him every single time. You guys have seen our posts, and we couldn't be doing this without these guys. But huge thank you to Jobtown, Taylorton's, and Crew First Culture. They've been absolutely insane with helping us get all the stuff, like we constantly say. But they're taking it one step further, and we're getting to do a pretty cool thing coming up. It's going to be like next month that it's really going to get going. Well, two cool things. So first off, Taylorton's is helping us out. So Brennan and I are both advisors for our cadet program in Beaver Dam. And next year, we're going to be taking all of our cadets to New York City, to Ground Zero, to tour a bunch of stations and do a whole bunch of stuff like that. And that is entirely fundraiser funded. So we don't have like a budget or anything that we're operating on. So it's all based on our fundraisers. And Taylorton's is going to be doing a 10 of the month. January is going to be our cadets as the 10 of the month. So they do a $5 donation for every 10 that you buy. So be on the lookout for that. That'll be huge. That's awesome. Just really cool thing that they're doing. We're doing a lot of stuff for the department from them and, with our podcast. So that's a huge thing that they're doing. Crew First Culture, Jeremy Sanders, he sent over a donation for the cadets. Like just an awesome thing. And then we got Jobtown, who basically we're using to pull all of these people that have been helping us out and how all of them have helped in some way, not only for now the cadets, but for this. And we're doing kind of a joint fundraiser for them. So Jobtown's designing us a t-shirt, and it's going to be with our logo, Taylorton's, his Jobtown, and then Crew First. And we're going to be doing a t-shirt sale. So we're going to be doing that. Half of all those profits are going to go to the cadet trip as well. So lots of awesome things. Like we said, being able to use this platform to hopefully do some good with that. That was what we kind of really wanted to do with it, with anything that we made from it and anything that we started to pull in. We just wanted to make sure that we gave back in some way. So the other half is going to go to get Brennan a better mic or something. I don't know. Well,
yeah, figure it out.
No, the other half is going to go back into the podcast. There's things that we have to front of there. And Brennan and I being young guys, it's going to be the easiest way to do that. But we're definitely going to be able to give, half of that to cadets, which is going to be awesome because, like I said, it's all fundraiser funded, and hopefully we raise more than we need, and then we can use that to, help for future trips or for future things with our cadets. I mean, we've got a little bit of a budget in terms of equipment. We get old equipment that we use for the cadets, but for the most part, everything that we do is entirely fundraiser funded. So it's been a really cool thing. We really enjoy working with cadets, and so that's just a huge thing to look out for. Really hope you guys will help support that, and yeah, it's really exciting. So thank you guys, thanks to everybody, and especially to those big 3 people who've been helping us out. It's just been insane. So I look forward for all of them to come back on the podcast next year as well. So Taylor, Jobtown, and Jeremy is all going to come back on the podcast next year. So that'll be awesome. Can't wait to have them on there. They can't thank them enough. Can't thank you guys. But now we got our very own guest tonight. So we have got Assistant Chief James Knowles of the Fond du Lac Fire Department. He's been an extreme mentor of mine. I got to work with him a lot when I was volunteering, as well as going to school. And we just can't wait to listen to what he has to offer and all the advice. So I'm going to let him do most of his introduction here. We're going to go ahead and bring him in. Welcome, Chief. Welcome.
Hey, Bryce. Welcome. Hey, Brennan. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. So like you heard, we were talking, we'll let you do a little introduction about, so tell us about yourself, how you got into the fire service, all that fun jazz.
Yeah. So 29 quick years in the fire service. And 27 professionally with Fond du Lac Fire Rescue. Started way back in 1994 when I graduated high school. The day that I turned 18, I was knocking on doors already to dive into the fire service, and that was with Oakfield Fire Department. So people that are not familiar with the Fond du Lac area, Oakfield's located central east portion of Wisconsin, small community of about 800 to 1,000 people. So that day that I turned 18, knocked on the fire chief's door. I want to get in. And I remember this comment like it happened yesterday. Like I was waiting for this day, knowing that you'd turn 18 and be asking to get in the fire service. So I'm sure we'll dive into the earlier years prior to that date of reaching out to the chief. But shortly after I got on with Oakfield, I pursued my associate's degree. And then very shortly after that, a number of the state of Wisconsin fire certifications. It was right after, I'm sure maybe a portion of our listeners, maybe all the listeners, maybe none of the listeners have heard about the Oakfield tornado that it came ripping through that small community in 1996. But it was a couple weeks after that tornado came through. I did sit down and started the process to become hired with the city of Fond du Lac. So that was probably a 6-month process to the date that it would be February 21st, 1997, where I was formally asked if I had interest. And it was pretty much one of 3 departments that I had that opportunity to join in. But Fond du Lac was close to home, family, friends, all within the area. So that was an easy choice. Through the years of my early years, a lot of EMS training, paramedic school up at NWTC. I also pursued any training opportunity that I could get on. If it was EMS, fire, rescue related, I was there. I definitely had the interest in learning from other colleagues, other fire service and EMS professionals. Through the years, I rose through the ranks, and typical of a person in my position now, company officer, shift captain, and assistant chief. Through that process, I obtained my bachelor's degree through UW Oshkosh Fire and Emergency Response Management Program. Excellent program that helped prepared me to where I am today. I also latched on to several great courses from the National Fire Academy, and then here lately with the ISFSI through learning how to be good at conducting safe live fire trainings within our training facility that our agency is very fortunate to have. So through those years, as I gained experience, gained knowledge, I also became highly interested in being a fire service instructor. So our local technical college, Moraine Park, offered me a position to be an adjunct instructor. And when my schedule would, see fit, I would take on the challenge of running certification classes from Firefighter 1, Firefighter 2, some driver operator courses. And then my last one, Bryce, you're in my class. That was for becoming a certified fire instructor too. So yeah, it's been a humbling career so far. It's been very quick. Like I mentioned, I can remember things like they happened, 29 years ago, like they happened yesterday. And it's on the horizon that I'll be moving on to that next chapter in my career. So very fortunate to start at a young age. I worked my tail off to get into the spot through my entire career. I've had, the ups and downs, but try to always maintain that positive mentality to take me in that right direction. I've always been a bit bridge builder. If I couldn't come up with the idea, or if I had questions, my resources out there, I wouldn't be afraid to pick up a phone or, write a message, or nowadays how you could text and such. It's so easy to do. So I always maintain that those connections, that is where things have got me to this day. And if there's an image that I could give, I'd put probably like a big image of the Brooklyn Bridge right there for drawing those connections to help me out.
Yeah, we've talked about that so much on here, even just getting started with this, where, our first episode, we were talking about having the same two listeners being our moms, and, how it's grown. But even, just it being at its base when we were not even record an episode yet. I mean, we literally set up all of our guests for the year before we even record an episode, and just being able to talk to people, it was such an easy way to do a bridge. Like that's what we've seen from this, is the amount of conversation starters and bridge building that you get to do just by doing something like this, or going to these trainings that Brendan and I have been fortunate enough to go to, is just kind of crazy. And it shows really how connected and how eager the fire service is nowadays to, help people and to connect with others.
Yep. You look at, way back several years ago, your connection was more local. Now you have the opportunity where, right within your own podcast, you could pull guests in from several states away, or maybe to the point where you're talking to an individual from across the other side of the world. That would be pretty neat. And how
that's a goal now. That's a goal now. That's that'd be
great.
So cool. Yeah, we had Kenny on, Boston, Jeremy from down in Oklahoma. I mean, and next year is just loaded with people from everywhere, from Wichita and in Jersey, and like it's so cool being able to see all these things from outside that bubble that is what, your firehouse and your county even. And then we always talk about this with everybody too, because of how much it changed. I mean, that was the reason that this podcast got started. And you got hired, it would have been a year and a half before my dad.
Yeah. Probably. Yep. Year and a half. Yep.
So, I mean, he always talked about it all the time too, and seeing the difference now. He was applying for one position out of like 100 applicants, and you were roughly the same thing, I'm a guess then. Do you remember how much you were in?
200 people, between 200 and 250 applicants, rings a bell now. And you look at now, we're only getting a handful of people, unfortunately.
Yeah, nobody can stay full even. It's just like there's more openings than there are applicants, and it's just crazy. Right.
It's a great career to get into. I try to inspire people of all ages. Actually, I was in a Subway today, and so there was two ladies having lunch, and they had their young daughter sitting on one of their laps, and so they tapped me on the shoulder, and how they want to explain on how her room is decorated with a bunch of fire bed sheets and pictures of fire trucks. And I was like, a little girl that was, my guess would be about 4 or 5 years old. Wow. And it's like, that's our future firefighter right there. So, my inspiring moment today was to actually have a conversation with this family, and hopefully, that would trigger, them to keep her motivated, even though that she's very young. But that would be pretty darn cool in 20 years that, she's, knocking on the door, getting in the fire service.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's always just a fun thing to see, because, for some reason we are idolized, and people do really enjoy seeing us and what we do. And it's a great thing that you can use to spread that positivity and to try and get those people on there. So that's awesome. You see it all the time. We give tours. It's Fire Prevention Week. So we were just, last week was, so we've been in and out of the schools, and the third graders, they all had great questions. Brent and I actually were doing one yesterday, and they all had great questions. They're all eager to be there and to see it. And that's always a cool thing to see.
Yep.
For sure.
Well, now, you got the guest spot on the way. Now we know who we're talking to. We got our questions now. We got a actually pretty hefty list here. So, we'll take this time to remind, but we actually got some more questions in from people. So send in your questions, guys. Brent and I can't make up all of them, but we've already got 2 more. So we had 1 last time. Now we got 2. We're building. So it's great. First one we got is one that we asked everybody. So what did you do as a new firefighter to earn the respect of your crew? So that 27 years ago, when you came in, what was your kind of go-to stuff? What did your normal day look like?
So my normal day was, just being that humble firefighter with the idea that there's a lot to learn within the hour, within the day, within the shift, within the year, especially that probationary year. And to gain that respect from the crew is, sort of be front and center. You're going to be listening more than you're going to be talking. And, and I respectfully say that I had a lot of questions. And as we're going through, say like a training event, and if something didn't click with me right, or it didn't make sense, or, as I have to step through the process, that would give me the opportunity to ask questions. And I guess that my ability to ask the questions at the right time was my interacting piece with the crews, and to give them a sense that, hey, this guy's engaged, he's paying attention, he's got a lot of interest in what we're showing him. Let's take the time, that extra time, with the questions that he's asking, and provide him that extra opportunity. So that's how how I seen it from way back in the day. A big piece that I recommend even to to our new members coming into the fire service now is to be motivated, stay highly motivated. It's almost like the alarm goes off, be the first one to the rig. The phone rings on the wall, be the first one to get up and answer the phone. Be the first one in the truck if you got a PR event that you're scheduled to go to at, say, 1:00 in the afternoon. Be out the truck at 5 minutes to, and in between that time where you're out at that apparatus and waiting for the rest of the crew to show up to leave to go to that talk, open up the cabinets and such. But show that you're involved. Definitely goes a long ways. And I'm just speaking on probably a very small portion of the pie of all the different ideas that you can, for a new member getting into fire service.
No, I mean, you hit it on the head, especially for just how our shift even operates. I mean, we have races to the rigs when we got, alarms and stuff. Even when the fire alarms come in, that's when we treat it as real as it is, because it very well could be, and it's a good way to get your reps in. But we have races there where the truck and the engine we're racing to see who can get out the door first, who can get all their stuff on. And when the phone rings, there's a foot race to the phone. I mean, yeah. there's been chairs that's been thrown. One of our former coworkers had elbow, or he sent somebody into like a door. Like, it's just, we try and do the simple stuff like that, where somebody who comes in, especially our new people, they see that right away, so they kind of pick that up, and you start to instill that in kind of your fun way, where you get the competition that we all love to have.
Yeah, it's quite rewarding to think of what I did now, and as I latched on to mentors, and now I'm in a position to set up mentors to help those new individuals come into the fire service, and see them replicate what I went through back when I first entered, or even better yet, come up with new ideas on how to better prepare those individuals. It's really neat seeing how that comes full circle.
Yeah. That's, I mean, every time we talk about it, I think everybody understands the position Brent and I are in, of being the senior firefighters with combined 4 years on. I mean, it's crazy how things change and how quick they are, and how you see that. It was just for me, 2 years ago, well, coming up on 2, and for Brennan a year ago, that we were those new probies that were trying to do all that stuff. And now it's like, okay, we get that rare opportunity that we can basically show them how to be a new firefighter, because we are still new firefighters. And you get to lead by a perfect example, because, until you start to think about it, you're like, holy cow, these people are, the senior firefighters. It's like, this is just how the shift runs. I mean, that my favorite quote we talk about, and I don't even remember who it's from, but I see it on all the fire department pages and stuff, but is, build a crew so strong you don't know who the leader is. And I think that's exactly our shift. Obviously, we got our captain and lieutenant, we're great, and we know what it is, but you get onto a fire scene and everybody knows exactly what they're doing, and they're all, self-motivated and doing their stuff, how we train, how we do it all. And it's great. I love our shift. I love going to work, how we figured it out.
Yep. And those are all important components for, being a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
Look at your fire last night. You guys were successful because just what you mentioned right there, if all those pieces fall in, take a look at it. So say 2 of those pieces are, taking a sidestep from it. That's when we're starting to hit failure. Yep. That's when more work goes on another crew member. That's when people get hurt. And unfortunately, that may provide the opportunity for someone to get, seriously hurt or even killed. But, that's neat hearing other departments, come up with their analogies on how well, how well you roll.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So just keep doing what, being motivated, acting like you're eager to be there. I mean, it's the best job in the world, like you said. As long as you come to work, you don't be a shitbag, and you know that you're at the best job in the world, like, you're going to do great. That's all it is. As long as you got the motivation, we're going to set you up for success. Everybody, every department, every crew is going to set you up for success as long as you want to be that successful firefighter.
Yep. And then, another big thing is too, you latch on to the people that know that you can form that true mentorship. It's not just that mentor providing all that information from you. It's, that feeling of being comfortable with around that person at all times, having that conversation, and knowing that mentor can also learn through you, or you being the young firefighter. And it's neat on, that perspective of that being a true mentorship, or that connection piece for, learning a lot of stuff, both professionally and personally.
Absolutely. Brandon, got anything to throw in there? We'll go on to the next question we got.
No, just like you guys said, I mean, just to get building with those building blocks, just starting from day one, keep building off that, because you don't come in this job knowing everything. So you have to come in with an open mind and eager to learn. So
yeah, absolutely. So next one we got on here is kind of similar along the similar lines, but now in your position, how do you motivate your young firefighters? So you've mentioned a couple things here and there, but is there any set things that you do to get those results, or that you want to add on?
Yeah, so I'm open. My office door is open a majority of the time, and I open for conversations from anyone within the department. My office door is closed. That means I'm on the phone. I got a meeting. I got business. As soon as that stuff's done, doors open. And if people, I reward the time when even the newer firefighters come in, if they're on the morning rounds of cleaning up the firehouse, just to have that general conversation about anything that's under the clouds. But to motivate young firefighters, I've been since high school, even before high school, I was big into sports. And I was highly motivated. I was highly competitive. Of course, blood, sweat, and tears, type of motivation. So you cherish the times that you're successful. You'd gripe on the times where you'd get beat up bad, hang your head and all that. But, you transfer that, fast forward now into the fire service. And, not that we're celebrating the misfortune of someone's property or someone's bad day, but when you see a crew of firefighters go and engage and seeing that well-oiled machine go into action, I take the time to celebrate the moment, almost like I'm at that sporting event where, the high fives come in. You grab someone by the shoulders and almost like you're coming off the football field and they score the touchdown off of a pick six or something. I'm that type of person. As I'm walking by, whatever tasks that I have within a given incident, if I have the opportunity to go reward someone or, go correct an action or whatever, that I call it that shoulder brush by, where you walk by someone and, 5 words or 10 words as you're walking by that person with whatever your comment is, definitely goes a long ways.
Yeah.
It's neat to do that. It's neat to win. We can win in the fire service on a lot of times. And there's times where, I don't consider them losses. I consider them note takers. So I transfer, that idea that, instead of being beat, it's like, how can we do it better next time? So I don't like the word we lost or, we're going to lose. It's, hey, what notes can we take to, win at the next time that we're, faced with a situation?
Yeah, we talk about all the time. You learn from your failures, your losses, the note takers. We know whatever you call them. That's where you learn best from. And we've said it so many times. I mean, football, I think, is like the best way that you can relate to this because, yeah, I mean, it is your Super Bowl. I mean, as soon as those tones drop and comes out, you hit it on the head. We've talked about before. We don't actually hope for people to get hurt or for, somebody's house to burn or whatever. But when it is, that is our game. Like that's why we're paid to do what we do. That's why we go to training. That's why we do it, so we can show our skills and you can do it. I mean, I'm supposedly going to be sent a recording because my woo got caught on Dodge Fire last night as we were en route to it. I didn't know our lieutenant was opening up the mic, and I may have let out a good excited woo and got told that it got picked up on the radio. So
that happens. I've been with the seatbelt alarm is sounding in the background as I'm identifying my response to dispatch, and then I get pegged for it, and so that happens.
Yeah, you just like I said, you get excited. There's a lot of worse things that could be said on the radio over a countywide service, so at least a little woo in the background is probably the least concern. But you're excited to go in. I mean, it was confirmed, and we saw the header coming up, and it was time to go to work. It was time for the game. You're getting hyped up, and we got our Job Town playlist pumping. Like we got everything that we set up to get ourselves basically like we're on our way to a football game. Like it's literally what it feels like in the back. It's like you're back on the bus on the way to the game, and it's just it's the best feeling in the world. So
maybe that was a good thing with the mic opened up at the time when you gave the woo. That you're that motivation piece to the auto aid units that were coming in. So if Bryce is fired up on this call, maybe I got to bring it. It's my turn to put the game face on. So
it's just a good time. It's great. We were in desperate need of one, so it was glad that it came in on our shift right when we were hanging out by our old our bay furniture that we finally got that we're fixing up and setting up. So it was a great time.
Cool.
All right. So, I mean, next one we got on there, like we kind of answered both those two in the first one. So what do you think brings a crew together the best? So obviously you're in your assistant chief position. You still interact with the guys a little bit, but you're not that crew leader anymore. So when you were, what was your kind of go-to bring together? And times have obviously changed. I mean, it's very different now.
Yeah. Nothing beats the firehouse kitchen, sitting around that kitchen table. A lot of discussion around there, the goods, the bads, the uglies. You could bring up good stories that don't relate to the fire service. Back to my football days, I got a colleague that was a year younger than me that went to Oakfield High School, and we'd bring up crazy stories that happened in Oakfield. And then I got three other crew members looking at us like these two are nuts, first of all. And second of all, it's like they're starting to engage in the conversation like they're part of my class or part of Oakfield High School. And to the point where, someone will come out and say, oh, we heard you say the story like 10 times already, or they say a piece that we, have mentioned in the past with talking about it. But, that's that kitchen table, bringing up conversations, having that lunch together, having, I know a big thing that we started when I was first became a company officer at our fire station number 3 in Fond du Lac, was big breakfast on Sunday mornings. So instead of having that lunch, we would have a brunch the spoil. And here I go back to what we talked about at the beginning of the podcast here was building the bridges. So we opened up the invite for some of the officers from Fond du Lac Police Department to come in and join us for breakfast. We'd pay for their breakfast. And we had a member from that would frequent the firehouse quite regularly from the community. And next thing, we're having scrambled eggs, we're having hash browns, we're having steaks, we're having bacon, we're filling ourselves up. It's really good. And, with having a community member there, having the members from law enforcement come in and taking their break time early in the morning to be with us, definitely paid huge dividends with our response out into the community. So if that interaction between us and the police department, we're on a first name basis.
Mm-hmm.
And that was part of the, just like your 8-person crew, that well-oiled machine that knew, what to do, what was needed from both agencies to make that call go good. So, especially in the moment of crisis, when we had Officer Burkholt that was brutally murdered back in lost track of dates here, 2008 or
I think so. Yeah.
10. Yeah. And so I can remember, the actions leading up to that date paid those huge dividends to make that call go successful during those unfortunate times on that incident. So, so now being an assistant chief, unfortunately, I don't have as much time as what I had in the past when I was on shift to be in that kitchen area and to enjoy those conversations. I truly do miss that. And when I'm with probationary firefighters going through their initial orientation training, I mentioned about that firehouse kitchen and how the conversations, the good times, the laughter, the crying, whatever, it takes shape in there. It's definitely the best place to be in the firehouse. So it's actually, you almost think of, the first action you do when you get to the firehouse on shift in the morning is to go to the kitchen. You're not even in uniform. And I get, it's like the first thing you do is you go right over to the coffee maker and get your cup of coffee. And then you start engaging in conversation like, oh, hold on here. I can't get too in depth here. I got to get in uniform. I got to trade out with my partner and, get ready. And more importantly, get that off-going member, out of the firehouse so he doesn't get busted on a late call. So, yeah.
I mean, there's a reason we got our kitchen table part of the podcast where we spit everything out. Is just that's exactly what you said. It's where you learn everything. And I mean, it's great that you guys, keep up with inviting PD. And I'm going to edit out the part where you said that you paid for the PD's breakfast because we currently charge our PD. So if anybody's listening, so they don't hear that part and start to expect that from us. But no,
I think it's time you got to change ways, Bryce.
Yeah, we have them up every weekend, and we do all their CPR training. So we really do work extremely well with them. It's one of the things I try and bring anywhere that I go teach or that I just meet people. Like it's that relationship's so huge as having that PD, having them know what you're doing and be an extra hand. I mean, now you got the Lucas, it's not as necessary, but the last code I ran, one of our officers, I'm setting up, I did the IO, and I go to turn around and I'm pumping up the bag, and he just like reaches down and says, you need a bag holder. And he went and held the bag up. I'm like, yeah, perfect. Like they know exactly what your next step's gonna be. Yeah, they know what's
fetching bags. I like to fetch bags too.
Yeah. So yeah, it's great. So it just makes things go so much smoother, especially when you get on scene. And we're still working on them with fire and not parking in front of the fire at the house. So that's because they got all these new fancy fire grenades now. So now they all really want to use it. Like, gosh darn it.
Yeah, so. Yeah. Unfortunately, but
yeah. But
you look at what brings the crew together is you set up a putt course.
Yes.
Station. We had a game called 3-coin that we'd play. We would slide for shakes while right next to our station one is Gillies. It's like a hop and stop, or I forget the terminology for that, but local ice cream shop. So the loser would typically have to go over there and pay for some ice cream for the crews. But you look at a day where you're basically locked at the horns. And if it was a series of bad calls or, some misfortune out there amongst the crew, it would be that moment that if it was like 15 minutes of putt around the station, or, we're playing 3-coin at the kitchen table or sliding on the kitchen floor with quarters for ice cream, you'd see people that were almost locked at the horns 2 hours ago, and now they're slapping high fives, cheering each other on. And that's, that's important because you don't want that negativity to build up. And then now you got this big problem for the rest of the shift, the rest of the cycle, the rest of the month, to the point where, things escalate too far where you're almost getting in trouble. But it's that atmosphere in that kitchen that is definitely the glue that really bonds that teamwork together.
Yeah, I've been so mean, and you just reminded me because I've been meaning to get the mini putt course because when I was interning with you guys, that was the most fun because it was exactly like you said. If you had a rough day, and all of a sudden I remember the first time, I think it was Gup. I was like, I'm gonna go get the putt stuff. I'm like, what's going on? Everyone's like, I'm in. I'm like, what's going on here? What's in? Like, and just also there's a putt course that's just set up throughout the station with like the janitor cart as one of the obstacles. And I remember the loser. I think it was Jack. I think he was the loser that day because he hit the ball into the janitor cart and he couldn't get it out. So he had to buy gillies because he had like a plus 20 strokes because he couldn't get it out of the cart. But yeah, it's such a great time. It was one of my favorite memories from there is just doing that and letting off steam. Because like you said, we got our ways we do it around there, but it's so easy. It's such an easy thing to do.
Yep.
So yeah, that's awesome. Next one that we got on here. This is one that we just now added. So this was asked from one of the previous guests a couple times ago, and we liked it so much. Now we're adding it in there. So this is from the perspective of a brand new firefighter. So this is like that guy walks in to you day one, and all he asks is, "What's going to happen to me?" What is your answer for that?
Strap on the seatbelt. There's a lot to do. It's. That's a really loaded question.
Mm-hmm. That's why we liked it so much.
Yeah,
we need to keep it in there.
And feel the heat lamp on me. Like this is actually probably the most difficult question to ask. But I sort of I go with the perspective of I try to figure out the personality of that individual. Some of the likes, dislikes, and such, and sort of spin the gears towards what would tailor them to be successful. You look at setting up with the right individuals. Obviously, as they're working through their shift. That I'm not available. I'm the Monday through Friday individual. I'm 6:30 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. But what happens when I'm not in office anymore? I try to set them up with someone that is going to basically be there for them during their entire shift. If it's a crew member, company officer, I'd lean to first, and then other crew members that could be that true mentor. And sort of help guide them. And then, you do what you can to, set them up for that true success. If it's, by, showing them, new ways of doing things compared to how they were taught prior to getting into the fire service. Pass to, okay, if they're into reading books, and you try to find their taste, you try to point them in the right direction. I think you set them up for creating that environment to feel comfortable around the fire station. You look at, day one, us guys, walking in that firehouse and we're just locked tight. The environment was tight. And, we, just like I mentioned before, that, you wanted to listen more than speak, but nowadays how that shifted to creating an environment where you're making an individual feel comfortable right from day one and continuing forward. So that's that's the first few things that come to mind with asking that question is we're definitely not going to kick someone to the wolves. We definitely don't want to set someone up for failure.
Yeah.
We don't even, step towards that, that's, we stay on the opposite side of the spectrum. But, the first thing I think you can do is make someone feel comfortable, like they belong here, like they have 10 years on the job. And then, let their abilities shine, or, start stepping towards them being successful with their, their knowledge, their abilities, their desires, what they're capable, of doing, next week, next year, 10 years down the road. So that's what comes to mind to me.
Yeah. And I mean, you spoke a lot on kind of how things have changed too, because that's something we've seen, and I was guilty of and a part of, is that generational shift where it was a lot of just shut up and listen, and now it's like you say something that everybody wants to know why. You know, all the new people, myself included, when I started. I mean, and I had to get humbled a couple times in terms of I grew up in the firehouse, and even when I was interning, I got got told I was doing a great job, but you could tell it was comfortable, and I needed to not be so comfortable a little bit, because you do, you know, it's your second family. Now you're there as a probationary member. You got to start listening. But even at that point, when I was going through, it still was a lot of questions, and you know, it wasn't just me. It's everybody in class. When I see it when I'm up at Fox Valley, you know, it's not so much shut up and listen anymore. It's why am I doing this? It's why am I doing this? Why am I you know, doing it this way? And that's definitely a shift that I think is a very interesting bridge to fill with the old senior members and the newer people coming on.
Yeah, and we look at the members that are at the start of their paramedic requirements within my agency to get on the ambulance as a fully capable lead medic. And you know, when I mentioned that you know, a member being new by a month or 3 or whatever it is, and they're going through that process, it's like when you go on those EMS calls and you're that lead medic, you have to be that leader of that crew. Mm-hmm. Exclude out all experience. Take all those years of experience, even if you got a 20-year lieutenant, a 25-year, you know, engineer, a firefighter paramedic that has received a number of awards for, you know, good jobs that they've been on. And then a partner that is quite humble and quiet. Now you got to point all those. The expectation is to step up and lead, and point them to cater to your needs as you're going through your patient assessment, and going through all the factors that you got to determine. You know, what's the best way of treating this injured or sick person. So mm-hmm. that's very difficult for a person that's got 1 month or 3 months on the job.
Yeah.
To look the opposite way through that sight glass and telling members on their crew with a lot of experience you got to do this and this, but that is the expectation that we have, and we motivate people to do that. And then after a couple calls, it starts clicking to the point mm-hmm. where you start seeing that become successful, and they're off and rolling.
Yeah, I mean, I can even think back, and I think Brendan can speak with this too. Like with your with our capstone, that was such a weird thing to have to do, because not only are you not even a probationary or a new member, but well, Brennan got lucky enough to be one, but you're just a student, and you were someone who was not getting paid to be there, someone not employed, and now it was like hands off. You got to lead and tell us what to do. So now you had not only all that experience, but you had somebody who's designated as like your preceptor, who is in charge of you, that now you have to order. And I think it's such a good experience. It's a very interesting one, and when you have to get through. But like you said, by the third, fourth call, it starts to click and you start to pick up. I remember your first one. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what do you mean I have to tell you what to do? I'm not even a medic yet.
Yep.
So it's
very odd feeling. Very odd feeling, because you're a guest at these departments. You're like, well, now you have to listen to me, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, the spotlight's on me. If I mess up, I mess up, and I don't want to look like an idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, take
That's
a look
how
at that
learn.
time, Brennan. You're if you're not hired, you're an advertisement to be hired.
Right.
And
right.
You show those abilities to you. That makes that interview process, that one-on-one with the fire chief, you know, a lot easier when you're looking at that. I couldn't emphasize that more for the people that are currently in medic school, to get aggressive. Don't come in as cocky and, you know, that Mr. Know-it-all, but be humble about it and set yourself up as that you're that advertisement for that next person to be in line for getting hired.
Yeah. Sure. And you never will know anything. Everything. That's what we've talked about too, is just always be learning. Fire service, EMS, it always changes. We'll find out next week that we've been doing something wrong for 30 years. Like, that's just how things work. And you got to be ready to learn, ready to adapt with that. And just because you've done it for 30 years doesn't mean it's right. Maybe it just, you know, there wasn't the studies for it. We didn't know why we were doing it. Like, it's ever changing. You got to always be a student.
Yep. In 30 years, I've never had 2 calls be exactly the same.
Right.
I may have gone to the same address, dealt with the same person, but different situations. And, that's the cool thing about the fire service, that challenge, more or less, what's that next call going to be, or when is it going to be? But okay, more uniquely, you go to the same address and, what you dealt with previously. Now, how is this going to add that twist to, what's happening now?
Yeah, that's always the most fun, going to those repeat. But they're just like, and of all people, I'm definitely guilty of it. But it's just like when you talk about fire alarms in terms of, the fire side is, you go to that same, and there's lots of guys on our department that have stories, I'm sure yours, that they went to their freaking flyer for the 8th time in a week, and all of a sudden this time it's legit. And they're walking in like, oh my God, what do you want this time? Like, with none of their equipment. It's like, oh no. Like, it's just, you get so complacent in that. And it's just another twist. So yeah, you always have to be ready, and it's never the same. Just like you say, you go there, same place. God, we have people we go to 10 times in a month, but it's never the same. Maybe sometimes the same issue, but it still is a brand new story, brand new circumstance when you walk in and out of there.
Yep.
All right. So this next one, I was actually really excited that I got sent in here, because I think you have a lot of good insight on this one. So this is from Logan from the Crystal Lake Fire Department, which is in Arkansas. He asked, how do we bridge the gap between the outdated teachings of IFSTA and modern data and experience-backed tactics of the fire ground? So basically, your Jones and Bartlett, your NFPA, all the stuff that is great and has its place, but definitely at times outdated, that we still have to teach. How do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, so I look at the IFSTA curriculum, the Jones and Bartlett curriculum, and definitely the NFPA standards as the foundation. The 2 curriculums, IFSTA and Jones and Bartlett, is that foundation to the basics of a new firefighter coming in. That's the stepping stone to learn how to advance hose lines, how to deploy ladders and such. And once you master those basics, and you continue on to learn other techniques through conferences, seminars, in-house trainings from experienced members and such, it starts to spicing up a little bit, is the easiest way that I could say it, to the point where it's still safe to do, but there may be times where it almost fails on you. So those extra techniques of pulling the hose line, deploying ladders with one person, with one person 24 up against a building, spin it out by yourself, and you got a ladder set up for a window rescue under 30 seconds. If you can't do that, you always got to revert back to the basics, or that foundational piece of what you learned. And that's almost like the saving grace, that, okay, I failed with advancing this hose line through the nozzle forward, technique. Now I still gotta, put a knock on the fire, but this isn't working for me, or I got crew members that ain't supporting, that concept. Now, you got to revert back to that foundational start and still continue on to complete that task. So that's the way that I, would interpret, the differences in between, the IFSTA, Jones and Bartlett, or, the stuff that you're seeing nowadays on YouTube, or even, attending FDIC. There's a lot of neat things, to comprehend down there. You have to figure out what best fits you and what best fits your company. What are the capabilities of your company? So that's important for a company officer to look at. I mentioned about the 1 person 24 raise for a window rescue. If I got a firefighter that tweaked a shoulder, is still on the job, still working, and is not able to deploy that 24 by himself or herself, as a company officer, I got to revert back to that foundational basic and maybe do a 2-person deployment.
Yeah.
So that may change my tactics as a company officer to cater to those needs. So, yeah, great question. Between IFSA and Jones and Bartlett, state of Wisconsin utilizes Jones and Bartlett. I've utilized Jones and Bartlett for my instructional classes that I've had. IFSTA, it's been a while since I've looked through that curriculum, so I don't want to be biased towards one or another.
Yeah.
But with that, the ability to go to Jones and Bartlett, and definitely the ability to utilize resources or material within an NFPA standard, that's how I set like the guidelines or SOPs to help others, guide them towards being successful at whatever tasks that they're required to do.
Yeah. And that is a really good way of looking at it, just having that as your basis. Because yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a new way to do it, and all dependent on the type of structure and type of building you have, and they're always going to try and be over encompassing in a blanket, and it's always going to be a little delayed too. Research takes time, so when you see that stuff and you can build off of it off there, that's a very good kind of point and good way to start that bridge.
Yeah, and you look at the availability of the resources nowadays. You have the internet by how many years and how many videos, how many different ways of doing things out there compared to when I first started in the fire service.
Yeah.
Even before I knocked on the fire chief's door to get in with Oakfield, I just had that perspective from the locals. And so that was me being with my dad, that was a member of Oakfield Fire Department, and seeing what just the members do inside that local volunteer fire department. And we didn't have the capabilities back then to see what others are doing, except for maybe some of the departments that were within that mutual aid response area.
Yeah.
So nowadays, you look up anything on the internet, and it's so valuable, and how quick you can learn on concepts takes within a couple minutes versus researching for or tripping across over maybe a 2 or 3 year or a 5 year time span way back in the 90s.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like you said, the amount of resources and the amount of just places that you can go. You get the people that it's the Fond du Lac way or the Beaver Dam way, especially when you think 20, 30 years ago where that was all you knew. I mean, that was all that you had. So it was what you learned at school and then what these people have experienced and done. Whereas now you can take the Philly way, the New York way, all these other things. You can just Google and look, and maybe it doesn't work on everything you have, but it always is kind of pushing you and changing your outlook on the type of tactics that you have.
Absolutely. What best fits for you? That's,
yeah.
I wish we could do some of the, complete some of the tasks with a 6-person truck company. But within, our small department, when I was a company officer on the truck, it's just my driver and I, and then hopefully a crew from the ambulance that would shift over when they would arrive on scene if they weren't tasked with patient care. So, you try to adapt, but you keep your mind open for, all those different good ways of doing things. But you hit that point of failure, and I'll raise my hand first. That failure can easily be reached, and you got to have something to revert back to. So it's neat that you just don't toss in the towel, but you could think through the process back to that foundational means of getting through that task.
Yeah, absolutely. Next one that we have on here is a little more personalized of a question. This is from our very own Nick in Beaver Dam. And he says, where is the state, so it'd be state of Wisconsin, at with their live fire instructor pilot program?
Okay, so from what I understand, with my interactions with members from the Wisconsin Society of Emergency Service Instructors, I actually asked this question here a couple weeks ago, and because I definitely have interest in it, especially that certification program. But what I was told is they're leaning towards it would be 2025 when they would roll that out, and the Wisconsin Society of Emergency Service Instructors has a conference. Typically, I think it's the third week in February annually, and they want to roll that program out during that conference. So I know members from that society has been pushing for it. It should be here today, but there's still some tweaks that they're making within that curriculum to take shape. In the meantime, ISFSI offers credentialed programs for fixed facility and acquired structures.
Yeah.
ISFSI is a great resource for members that are definitely interested in the instruction world. It's amazing the connections that you have through their blogs. By just identifying yourself as a member, if you meet someone, face to face out there, just that quick interaction piece, or even that phone call, making that, maintaining those bridged connections. It goes a long ways. But last year, or this past February and the year prior, my agency held the conference within our training in our training classroom at Station 1, and then also we utilized other resources within the city. We brought ISFSI in to do that live fire instructor credential. Two very good instructors, well-spoken, very passionate for live fire training and setting people up to be successful when they're conducting live fire trainings within their own respective agencies and such. We on day 3 of this 3-day class, they brought some of the unique pieces in that you just don't think of if something bad would go wrong, and that whole line of events that take shape after that unfortunate situation if someone gets hurt or killed. But the main drive with them running that class is setting people up to be successful with the training. For safe training is ultimately number one, but if some unique situations take place, that you're on the positive side of making something right if it went wrong.
Yeah, that's awesome. So hopefully that answered your question, Nicholas. We know how to get ahead of you to ask or get a hold of you to ask any more of that. This next one got sent in. This was an anonymous one that wanted to be sent in. So basically, you started at Oakfield volunteer, and then that was Brennan and I both start as well. And both our departments work a lot with it. I mean, we're a combination, and you guys, to my knowledge, you guys are the only full-time in Fond du Lac County, right? That's what I'm trying to think of.
Yes.
I was running through it, and that's same with us and with us being in Dodge. And so any department that you go to help or that comes to help you is going to be volunteer for the most part. And the question is, what is your opinion on volunteers having expectations for the department, and how do you get your voice heard if you want to change those? So a lot of people, we run into it. I like to talk a lot about how our POCs, I feel, do a lot of training. And I mean, compared to where I came from at the town, that just the amount that we offer and the amount of people that show up is great. And it's not easy to do. There's a lot of dedication they have, but there's fire's fire. And where do you draw that line at where the expectation is when you got people that got a different full-time job and then do this in their off time?
Yeah, it's you got to find a way. It's important for for chiefs, those local departments, to find that motivational piece to get their members in at the firehouse to show up at trainings. I know there's been several times where the volunteer agencies that have been around Fond du Lac that would come to me or come to any member within my agency and ask, okay, what can you do to help us spark that interest? What trainings do you have out there? Or can we train with you guys? We have they'd make the mention that you're a big brother in the county, you're highly respected. You're that auto aid component to our responses and vice versa. But yet, our members are, a little hesitant. They want to succeed when they show up on your fire calls and such.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help us out? So I think the first piece, that I look at is, that is that assistance coming in when we need personnel. We need extra apparatus. We need that extra coverage. So the first thing that, that's important that any member, it doesn't have to be the chief, it could be the firefighter coming in, they have that conversation, be approachable. And it's almost like you're putting your name out there, that, you say like Jim Knowles, and then next thing, all these different ideas or stories, or people, say, I know him or whatever, come out. It's, yeah, Jim Knowles is one thing, but, as you can see on my polo shirt here, I'm representing my agency. So if those members are coming forth with any inquiries, you're representing the fire department that is supposed to be supporting them too, being a good neighbor, and such. So I couldn't emphasize, even the opportunities that we do ride-alongs programs when we don't have like paramedic students going through their clinical times, but we offer the opportunities to do ride-alongs and say, hey, come ride with us for one day, have lunch with the crews and such, make face with these individuals. So when you're at a bad call at 2 a.m., as I say, my analogy on that is you're eliminating the 2 a.m. handshake.
Yeah,
You
heard you
met
use that a lot.
person
Yeah.
prior. Yep. So it's those are important pieces to do, and support and offer, and I also look at it too where how many years ago was that, Bryce, where I did that Fire 1 class down at the town of Fond du Lac, and I brought in other adjunct instructors that are members of my department, and I think it was like 6 or 7 years ago. And just
it wouldn't have been that long because I wouldn't have been there. Maybe I think you did something similar. I was thinking of when you had we had that kind of in service with the new fires, the training tower that you guys got. We did that, but yeah, 6 years ago, maybe I was a cadet there. Maybe I was showing up there.
Yeah,
but I know we did a lot with you when I was down there.
Yeah, we did a Fire 1 class, but coming in as an instructor, especially in the volunteers, for the volunteer agencies, it's you look at members that, okay, they're working 40, 50 hours through their normal profession, and then on top of that, they're putting 3-4 hours a week, maybe even more within their volunteer companies, and you want to make the most of their time. So as an instructor, you come in with a good mindset in a well managed like schedule or ideas on how to make it interesting through the night. And it can be challenging at times because you're trying to get a read of, the crowd, and, I didn't have the time, to closely analyze everybody, especially when they come walking in the door, who's got good day, who had good day, who had bad day and such. But at least you try to point in a direction where you can make, your topic interesting. You didn't want to create death by PowerPoint, so you have to cover everything by PowerPoint, but you try to shift it into more of that hands-on. I think people appreciate that hands-on training more, and that was that true test that I can remember when we did that Fire 1 class down at town of Fond du Lac. That the management skills through the class definitely played huge dividends. A lot of people, come up to me to this day and still thank me for, running through, that class. And I shouldn't just say me. I know I want to step totally off my pedestal, but, I had other instructors there that were fully capable of supporting, my vision on it. So, and I supported their abilities to, to deliver the instruction too. But I think that's very important. I think if someone has any interest in getting into fire service professionally, you almost got to grasp them by the hand, and you got to start that mentorship right now. Especially we're in this crisis now where, you got 5 openings, but only 6 people are showing up for the interview table. So anyone that's expressing interest or just have that small, that little bit of inkling of, questioning about it, you got to grasp onto those people, and not that you're babysitting, but you really gotta capture them quickly, and you got to maintain that. So
and it's just as hard, if not getting even harder, because you think about with the full-time well drying up, the people not wanting to apply for the full-time, like it's as equally, if not, even twice as bad on the volunteer side, because now you've got people that don't want to do this job professionally and get paid to do it. Now you got to look for how are you going to do this in your free time? Tom was where I was from, where I think one of the only maybe 2 or 3 still fully volunteer in the state, which is great that they can maintain that. But that's where you see everywhere is now these POCs coming up and these part on POC positions. And even then it's hard. It's still hard to get people to come in, yeah, you're giving them some compensation for it, but if you don't have a passion for it, after working 8 hours at a desk job or construct, or whatever job you have, to come out and train for another 3 hours instead of being home with your family, like there's just not happening. There's just such a small thing, and I think that's where this person's getting at too, is like where do you draw that line? I mean, you need a body, you need a warm body to be in that seat, but they need to be competent. How competent is enough? Because they're never going to learn everything that they need to in that free time.
Yeah. And that's, we go back to the question that we previously had, you got to build them up to at least that foundational level. So that's required by, NFPA 1001. And at least get that basis. And so when they're in that seat, that, yes, we can be successful. We always got that position that we can revert back to. And, you got to empower their abilities to find that interest and, to keep showing up and such. And, you just don't want your fire department to be that, the fraternal order, go to the order just for when we got, meals and meeting nights and when we got the picnics. That's all important stuff. But the main emphasis is when that pager goes off, that we got people showing up, adequate amount of people showing up. And, and even before that pager goes off, that, people are showing up and preparing themselves to adequately respond when that pager does go off.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that second part of there, if you're one of those, so maybe they see that there's a shortfall, they need to have a little more higher expectations, or at least they feel, how do you get your voice heard?
I think
another loaded one.
Yeah, that is a very loaded one. Yeah. So I think it's the job of the fire chief, this day and age, to make sure and ensure that you got a safe space to work in or to be in. You're open for conversations. You're allowing people to speak up. There's sort of that hierarchy that everyone respects the chief all the way down to the firefighter, and that authoritarian style leadership when you're on the call and such, whoever's waving at, I'm in charge or incident commander flag. Yeah, we give you the total respect, but it's all the in-betweens that there is a lot of good ideas out there. And you got to open up the environment where everyone, first of all, feels comfortable to speak up, to share those ideas. Not saying that you got to have every idea accepted, but at least have conversation about it. And a decision doesn't have to be made at the snap of a finger, but can be considered over a span of time, whatever it takes to, for it to fall into place, or even to the point where it respectfully is declined. And, more importantly, that if you got that idea in that safe environment and it does get shot down, that doesn't push you in a corner. That opens up the opportunity for you to come up with your next idea and still feel comfortable talking about it.
Yeah, plant that seed. I mean, we talk about that a lot on our shift, that there's things that we see that we'd like to have change or whatever. It's never going to happen just at the kitchen table where you figured out the problem and you solved it. You've got to plant the seed, and maybe it gets shot down right away, but it's there. So, something happens on a call where maybe it doesn't go as best as it could, or maybe, that point gets proven in a little form, and all of a sudden it's in the back of somebody who makes those decisions head, and they're like, maybe they're onto something. Let's look more into it. And, you got to keep bringing it up, keep pestering it, and knowing how and when to push it and how hard is kind of the politics you got to play, as much
Yep.
as I hate politics. So, all right. Well, the last kind of question that we have listed here before we do our closing ones, which are again loaded ones, thank you to our last Captain Wes, is where and when did you discover your passion for teaching in the fire service, and how do you maintain that? So we talked about it in your bio entry, and you have failed to mention it, so I'll give you a little plug, but you were awarded the Wisconsin Fire Instructor of the Year in 2022. So obviously you've got quite the passion for teaching. And where did you kind of develop and instill that, and how do you keep it? Because you're a very active instructor currently.
Yeah, so I look back at my early years of when I got jumped on board with being an adjunct instructor and going through the process with being connected with a local tech college. Yeah, I was very young in the fire service. Actually, I was, I had was a captain at the time that came up to me, being a young member, just getting on the ambulance and such, and knew, my passion was definitely being illustrated out there just by my motivation. But that individual talked me into that. Hey, let's explore the idea of becoming an instructor, and we could do it with Marine Park, and I think you'd be good at it. Okay, so I went through that whole application period, and then I got partnered up through my 30 hours of observed instruction that I had to do with my instructor certification. I was paired up with a well-experienced member of Milwaukee Fire Department. I was teaching for the tech school, and I learned a lot, especially with just my style of delivery, with listening to that individual, watching that interaction that he had with the students. I can remember it was a very fun group. Actually, to say is right at Eden Fire Department, southeast of Fond du Lac.
Yeah.
So that's actually where I'm at today. I'm in my office at home, and that fire station's within about 5-minute drive from my house. But anyways, my interaction with public speaking wasn't at that level, and I had to learn to get through that, where my years of coming up through my education of junior high school and high school and all that didn't really put me in a position or prepare me for that public speaking component. And it was quite a learning process, and going through that mentorship with my 30 hours of observed instruction, I learned a lot. And each time that I did it, I continued getting better, and that person identified that.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember the first time was like complete failure, but at the end of my 30 hours and even beyond that portion of that certification, that person came through and said, wow, night and day difference. So the abilities for that individual to bring me down, make me feel comfortable, gave me a lot of advice. I respected that I was still new to the fire service, even though that I was brought up many years, through my dad being a volunteer at Oakfield. I've seen a lot, but there was still a lot to learn. So I took the time to research, the material ahead of time, front load the information, and prepare myself. There'd be times where I would be in my own room where I would practice delivering that message to the point where it'd drive me nuts. But I just had to, swallow the stone and get better and take on the challenge. And to the point where I allowed my experience to catch up with the years that I was putting in towards being an adjunct instructor. Finally, where it meshed. And, being a fire service professional for several years definitely gave me the abilities, going through school, learning how to research, especially when the times where, YouTube videos weren't readily available. And, like what we talked about before with all the different readily available resources that are at the tip of our fingers. That stuff all started blending in. And then I started learning how to manage training events a lot as I was going through my experience too. So if I was at fire the firefighter 1 certification class, to the point where, some additional challenges came in, through the past couple of years, where my agency was leaned on by the instructor society to hold a conference.
Yeah.
And to manage that was one heck of a task for me. But then I found out that, okay, with my abilities, my style to manage, that was right in my wheelhouse. So, where they're looking at, maybe some of, like some basic items, it's like, no, let's do this and this and this. Let's bring ISFSI in and, bring those good resources in. We can do it. We'll make it happen. And to draw connections with people that can help me, and in turn that I can help them, we can meet success. So I would say my turning point was with becoming a good instructor. I would say it was within about 10 years ago. I had plenty of years as a company officer, with that experience. I wasn't afraid to stand in front of a crowd and deliver whatever message.
Yeah.
I surrounded myself with good assistants, good assisting instructors. I had great colleagues that I could lean on.
Yeah.
And then, to this day, where you mentioned it, Bryce, the award that I got, I'm very humbled to get it, but, that identifies that I'm doing the right thing, but I'm still surrounded by good people that helped me, that got me to that point. So, there's others that deserve it more. I see that others deserve it more than what I did, but, it takes quite a bit, but it's keeping that push. How can I do better? How can I do better?
Yeah.
And to the point where, a big thing was evaluations. We talked about it in Instructor 2, Bryce. So evaluations, I hate forms. I hate sending out surveys and such, because you try to get 30 responses, you only get one back. So my way of evaluating was I would do spot check phone calls. And if I had a training session, I would call someone up randomly, just start conversation out and say, okay, whatever we're talking about initially. And then I would slowly blend that into, okay, what did you think about tonight's class? What did you think about the course? And that's how I evaluated. That's how I did that self-check, to the point where, hey, was I off cue tonight? Was I, how did the course work? Did you learn something from me? And, I always made adjustments off of that, and I still do that. So that's where that big Brooklyn Bridge comes into play, where you can make that phone call afterwards and then get that true, honest, that honest comments back. And, fill some of the gaps with a few opinions or a few ideas. So I guess that's my sight glass through, my years of being that instructor. So.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's very. I remember us talking about that. Yeah, I think that's a very good and unique, because, I mean, we doing stuff at the tech, and CPR instructor is the one that's always hilarious. Is you have to do that evaluation after every single one, and it's just like there's nothing beneficial that comes from that. It's just pencil whipping, because you have to do that to get the cert. So I really like that idea of calling and following up and using those connections to figure out exactly how it went, instead of just that pencil whip survey that everybody does just so they can get their cert and go back home. Like it's a very good way to bypass that. But you do those spot checks, and then it becomes automatic, where people call you and even feel comfortable to say, wow, Jim, you had an off night. Did you have a rough day at work or whatever? Or, hey, you mentioned this. I got a question about this. Can you mention this at next class or next time that you teach? And that's the beauty of it. So you get that good, honest connection. That beats out that paper evaluation night and day. Yeah, that's awesome. That's such a great way to bypass that and get that stuff. So now we've got the last ones there. Brennan, you got anything to add based on any of that?
I know I think that's a really good idea, actually. The spot checks. I think that's a good idea. I'm finally getting my instructor stuff. So next semester I'm taking instructor 1. So
He's already one of our
learning.
the informal instructors that knows a lot and shows there. Like we said, just the craziness of being too young that do a lot of the training there. But now he's finally getting the paper cert that means so much for.
Yeah, Brennan, you get that instructor 1, you go right at the instructor 2 right away, and then you start understanding the foundations of NFPA 1403. Next thing, you're that instructor in charge for your live fire training. That's some fun stuff, putting that stuff together. So
yeah.
And after that training, everyone's coming out, everyone's feeling good. You're slapping high fives and such, laughing and joking. Those are good days in the fire service.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I love teaching because I always learn something. Like going up there, you always have, whether it be somebody who actually has experienced something and have that to be, or just a question. Like some people, they just come up with the greatest questions that make you think or make you figure out the answer that you never have asked or thought of before. And I always learn something new. Anytime that I teach, I learn something. I think every single instructor in the fire service always says that, but I think it's true. You know, I've never not learned something in one way or another when I go up and teach somewhere.
Yep.
All right. Done with that, we're moving on to our closing questions. So each podcast, we ask a question from the guest and basically use that to carry on for the next one. So the first one that we have is going to be the question that Captain Wes Yankee, our captain, came up with on the last episode. So I ask that for you, and then you'll have the utmost pleasure of trying to come up with a question to ask yourself and figure out how hard it is and why people need to send in questions so we don't always have to come up with them. There's my another plug for it. So, so the question that Wes had last time was, what was a pivotal point in your career that changed you on the job or as a person?
Right away, I'll go the day that I was promoted to company officer, fire lieutenant. I was still young. When I entered the fire service with Fond du Lac as a professional firefighter at 20 years old, my time where I did 1 year in school while I was employed, very fortunate to have that opportunity. And then I only did 6 years on the ambulance. So I'm into the 8-year mark of my career. And I went through a promotional process. I prepared myself very well and got awarded a position. And the first day on the job, I had my engineer, who was the most senior department, or member of the department, Elmer Peck, if you can remember that. And I had another very senior member that should have been in my position. Bryce, you probably know him, Brian Johannes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And now I got to capture, their minds on saying, okay, I'm going to be that person in charge, and we're gonna make this roll. So going into work that morning was probably the most nerve-wracking time that I've had driving into work, and that's only a 10-minute drive. But a lot was spinning through the wheelhouse, and how can I capture their attention and be productive through the day? So I knew that Brian was preparing himself for a fire engineer promotion process. So, and I knew Elmer Peck had several years as a fire instructor. So let's blend the two together. We had a day where the weather was somewhat crappy. So let's go down to the classroom. Let's help Brian prepare for this engineer's exam. So we went through several hydraulic questions on the grease board, had good conversation. And I had an idea in mind with the hose concept that I wanted to implement into the fire department, into my agency that incorporates 3-inch hose lines to water thief, which we call our apartment line. And it utilized hose bundles made up of 150 feet of 1 3/4 lines for these long stretches, or these stretches where in the buildings where they're not equipped with standpipes. We call that, we would manually do it or horizontally do it with this 3-inch line. So I brought it up on the board. We walked through the hydraulics, and this is no kidding. Within about a half hour going through these hydraulic equations with this new concept that I wanted to introduce into the near future, we had a fire in an apartment building. on Western Avenue in Fond du Lac. So as we're rolling out, we're first in on this sucker too. I got Elmer driving the truck, and he's looking for direction, and I got Brian in the back in the jump seat of my engine, and he's already popping a bunch of questions at me for even before we even hit the street off the front apron.
Yeah.
So I had to collect my thoughts, and I go to both guys and said, guys, listen, this is what we're going to do. Remember what we did on the board with this apartment line concept? We don't have 3-inch hose, but we got 2.5-inch hose.
Yeah.
And in our high-rise pack, as we called it now, we call it hose bundles, we had a gated Y on it. So let's make this stretch out. I'll try to explain it over the radio as best as I can to the second-in engine company.
Mm-hmm.
And let's make that stretch out. And so we did it, and we were effective. We threw some people for a curve, but it brought up good conversations afterward. Yeah. And we're looking at each other like, this is pretty damn cool. You know, you got some young buck lieutenant on here with all these senior guys, and we just kicked butt at this fire.
Yeah.
And we just threw this huge football audible play in on the equation, and we were successful with it. So, yeah. Fast forward a year later, I switched shifts, and I have the opportunity to go out to fire station number 3. So it's our satellite station. That's where the company officer is leaned on that you got to have more of that leadership role amongst your crew. I was partnered with another senior engineer, Scott Kettle. You would remember him.
Familiar, yeah.
Very good engineer, very passionate about the truck to make sure it was ready, and very reliable, like like engineers should be, and the majority of our engineers were. And so working at a 5-person firehouse and being that leader to make sure that your crew was ready, and to get that buy-in when certain decisions were made, and you knew what was the right side of right and what was the wrong side of left, to say that. But you had to get that buy-in without creating debate at the kitchen table.
Yeah.
And there was some difficult times where I would, in our morning briefs with our battalion chiefs or shift captains, that, okay, now I got to take the information back to the crew, and there's really little to no room for rebuttal on an idea or a concept or a policy procedure. So I looked at that I had to get buy-in, and I looked at that informal, what's my informal way of connecting with my crews to get that buy-in. So my process through that was, you look at how Scott, my engineer, was very respected within the department and definitely within my crew. He was that informal leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So as I got that piece that now I got to transfer over to my crew, I would informally go through Scott to get his buy-in and ask for his buy-in or ask for his support as I'm trying to get that buy-in from the rest of the crew.
Yeah.
Because as I mentioned that piece, then the crews, instead of looking at me and providing immediate feedback, they would look at the reaction of Scott. Mm-hmm. And if Scott got that buy-in before, as I front loaded the information, Scott would acknowledge, yep, that's a good idea, or whatever he said, or the body gestures, or his style definitely made it either it's going to work or not.
Yeah.
And so as the crew saw that, then it was easy for them to buy in to me, and that was they knew it, that I was using Scott as that informal leader. The informal leaders, I'll admit, are more powerful than your formal leaders at times. Yeah. And if I had that informal connection, then I could get that that true buy-in from the rest of the group on that. So those were pivotal points to set that mindset. Be creative on doing it. It's not like I'm trying to sneak something in, but those buy-in pieces from your crew for that spirit of cooperation is important. And the way to get that across, you got to be creative on it. So I'll hang my hat on that changed me and how I moved forward and how I, have been successful through today. Yeah, and there's times where I made mistakes. And I was never afraid to admit to my mistakes. And I would always be the first one to be thinking, how can we overcome this mistake? And then share that knowledge with the crews. Or if you heard something that happened at another department, you found a way to make that story interesting for crews to connect into it, and then realize, yeah, that should be important, or how we operate, or what happens within our department. So I would say those were the pivotal points within my career, and that being of that in that position of a company officer.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. And I mean, you're right on the head, exactly kind of what Wes was getting at too, is you've got it. I think you've said it. I know we've mentioned it on the podcast before, but those informal leaders are so important, and it's kind of interesting and cool how they can change and make and break a crew. Where if you got that initial butting heads of a young officer that comes in all gung ho and I'm going to make all these changes and do this stuff without getting that buy-in, and you're just going to have button heads for a while. So
yep, absolutely. Yeah. That's tough road. It's frustrating. And then you start slipping off that good path. And then, you got to find a good approach to stay on track. You're not going to conquer anything overnight. Rome wasn't built in one day, right? My dad always used that analogy. Yeah. So I always had that in the back of my mind that, as you're trying to make change, you got to have patience in order for that change to go through its due justice in the process. So
yeah, absolutely. So the big question that everybody hates to get, that is the most loaded and brain messing one. I don't know, it's just always fun listening and seeing everybody's try to work through this, because you never think about it. But what question do you wish that you asked as a new firefighter, or do you still have yet to be answered in the fire service? So this will be going for our next guest, which is November. So actually, next one's Brennan and I. So this will then be for JD, who's going to start off our year in January.
Okay, so yeah, that is a loaded question, but I'll go back to my paramedic days, and even before then, I was a C student in high school. My mind was wrapped around sports. Okay, we mentioned that before, and so then I graduate high school. I get in the fire school right away, and just my heart turned over to the point where I'm a 4.0 student, and I was fortunate to get on the job quick, and then they supported me going through medic school. So now I got the task to go through and be very successful of going in accomplishing my medic certification. So I was successful. My transition, I followed your dad's footsteps, Bryce, by, what I did as an EMT basic, go get experience down in the Milwaukee system on a private. You get exposed to a lot of patients. You get good at patient assessments and bedside manners, and getting used to that interaction at the emergency departments or up on the floor levels. But I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I took that advice from your dad. And so I was successful on the ambulance. It took me, a short order to, get me under, that lead medic status within our department.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started going to educations that were, I can remember one was down at Frederick Hospital, or the Wisconsin Medical College. And I'd like to say it was for pre-hospital trauma life support,
okay,
or a course that was similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was 3 of us from Fond du Lac. We're the only EMS representatives, mingled with some qualified nurses,
Mm-hmm.
some physicians, through the Frederick and Doyne Hospital and Children's Hospital
Mm-hmm.
down in that complex. And we went through we're going through this class, and some of the questions that were being asked from the instructor out to the students, us three, especially me, I wasn't afraid to raise my hand and say, okay, this is the answer. And at the end of the day, I had a couple people that were physicians coming up and saying, wow, you're good at answering those questions. And I'm in the back of my mind thinking, well, this is easy. I just learned it in paramedic school. And,
Yeah.
I'm starting to gain this experience. And one physician even said, do you ever consider going to medical school? And, it continues to resonate with me that, maybe I should have done better in high school. And take that passion, the course I did, and then get into medic school. And, with my abilities to comprehend the information, especially where I'm passionate about in the fire service and the EMS field at the time, maybe I should have took a step further and pursued, being an MP or a PA or maybe, MD. If I had to do it all over again, would I have taken that route? Would it be something totally different, than the fire service, for my passion for outdoors? You can see it in my office here.
Yeah.
I love the outdoors. Would I be the DNR warden? I don't know, but, being asked that as a new firefighter at the time, it's almost like sometimes it kicks me hindsight, because I got friends that were basically in the same boat as I was going through high school. Were successful in college. And one is the head anesthesiologist up at Theta Clark Hospital.
Okay, yeah.
And very successful. And it's like, and, kudos to him for, obtaining that status. And it's like, could that have been me if I would have stuck into it, or if I would have, considered that question at the time? So there's a lot of opportunities out there. There's a lot of wishes that, if things were different, but I think, where I'm at today, talking with you guys today, what I've been explaining over the past couple hours here is, I'm in the right spot. I definitely enjoyed it. The fire service has definitely treated me well. It's established my normal living. I'm very lucky to be where I'm at today. I'm very thankful for the city of Fond du Lac for, providing that, establishing that normal living. So, if I'd go back and change anything, maybe I'm just, just having conversation with you right now. But that is one thing that, has stuck with me from the earlier years within my career.
So would you go back and change anything? Would you go back? That'd be kind of the question you would ask.
If I would go back and change anything?
Is that the question that basically you would ask as a new firefighter that you want us to ask of? Like I said, it can be JD, I believe.
Yeah.
Going to be kicking off.
Yeah. So
I know they'll spark some conversations with.
Yeah,
with them.
I think that would be, adequate. That what change would you make if you had that opportunity? Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that concludes all the questions that we have. So next, like we talked about, we got our little kitchen table spot. So if there's anything that kind of you thought about throughout the podcast you want to talk on a little more, expand on, or with your guys's, if you have any trainings coming up, anything that, you want to get out there that people can look out for, or maybe, apply for, and any of that fun stuff. The time is kind of yours. And if Brennan and I have anything else to throw in, we will, but very informal, just kitchen table, however long it takes.
Yeah. So there's several different training opportunities out there. I'm just starting to see the front load of information for FDIC coming up for 2024. They're advertising a lot of good things. So with a lot of good courses down there, it's probably best to register early. You look at what's happening locally here. I think I seen on Instagram or Twitter today that was it 6 members from Appleton Fire Department went down to department or a jurisdiction around Chicago for some heavy extrication training. They had several pictures of that, and that seemed really intense and good, out of the box thinking type of training.
Yeah.
So it's it's good to have those opportunities. I wish they were presented more. On the flip side of that, there are plenty of trainings out there, and jump at what you can. I'll advertise that the instructors conference is coming up. The state of Wisconsin instructors conference coming up the third week in February of 2024. I myself and Lieutenant Andy Aird are going to be presenting during that conference. It's building the 1403 instructor cadre. So there I'm taking my experience with having a fire training tower and the successes that we've had, the experiences that we've had, the knowledge that we've built with several courses that we've taken to get us to the point where we were conducting safe live fire training. So I couldn't recommend taking that course more. You hear more departments of incorporating fire training towers. Awesome tool, the best tool to have. Or if you have a chief that's supportive of acquired structures and setting fire and those acquired structures, those are great opportunities. Depending on what your training objectives are within those opportunities, and then be creative within your department, and by going to these courses that are outside your department, just don't be the only stakeholder of those learning opportunities. Bring that information, bring that knowledge back. And sit down and share that information with your crew members. Share it with your upper staff level of your fire department, and make changes. Just be respective that change is not going to be coming at snap of a finger. It takes a little time, but a lot of great information, a lot of good things that are happening within the state, out throughout the nation, even across the world. Jump at it, take every opportunity, because you don't want to be coming back in hindsight and saying, I wish I would have attended that training, because you're hearing good stuff, from members that did attend it. So, make adjustments. People have families and such, but make the necessary adjustments to attend that stuff. National Fire Academy, they offer great classes. They're the command and control, a multi-alarms response course out at the fire academies. That made me feel comfortable with that command and control of any incident when I was put in those positions. So it made me feel comfortable. It made me successful at a couple incidents, and enlightened me after a couple incidents where we had a few mistakes. Like I'll mention again, take every opportunity that you can for these.
Absolutely.
A lot of good stuff.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, thank you, Brennan. You got anything to add? Anything from the podcast? I don't got anything either.
No, I don't. I was saying we got a couple trainings that we're going to the next year. We got a lot of stuff that we're going to. So the firemanship in Illinois.
Yeah, that's one
conference is coming back. North Florida conference. I know Great Lakes is starting it up again.
Registration for that is November 1st, I believe. So that's Duffy. Sean Duffy's the big one there. He was just 2 guests ago that we had on here. So that's a real good one. That's pretty close. But firemanship coming back to Illinois. That's good. Fools, we've been holding a lot of things. So we got Old Fashioned in Brew City now. So you got two in our area. But lots of good opportunities. There's always information if you want it. Always take as many as you can. Like you said, Chief. I mean, it's any opportunity you can to better yourself, you got to take.
Yep. And even for this podcast, a lot of these courses are advertised well in advance, and you get those dates out and you start plugging those pieces in, and you have those motivational factors to attract people towards that. That's all good stuff. Great networking.
Oh my God, yeah.
Just to interact with you guys right here. This is great networking here, but there's other avenues to make those connections.
Oh yeah, the bars after the training, it's the best. That's all. That's all where you make all those bridges, all those avenues. Yeah. No, it's always a good time. Well, Chief, you don't got anything else, we really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity
Yeah,
too.
thank you,
This,
Chief.
I'll be honest with you, this is my first podcast.
Yeah, awesome.
So-
we had Kenny.
Yay, you
Kenny
too.
was his first podcast. Get your first podcast is great.
Okay.
That's awesome. It's exactly what we're looking for. Is just bringing as many people as we can onto here. We filled up next year ridiculously fast. We can't wait. But yeah, we just anybody that gave us the time of day or that kind of helped influence us in our fire career, we've been reaching out to, and it's been insane. So we can't thank you enough for coming on. Really appreciate all the advice and pieces of information that you had to add.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And if anyone has questions, and they steer it through you guys, you can definitely point them my direction. I'm a phone call, I'm an email, I'm a text message away. So, yeah, and any member looking to get into fire service, we're willing to have conversation on that piece too. So, a lot of
We're
new
hiring
people-
too. We're hiring too. Don't listen to that. We're hiring too. So,
Quite
no, great.
competitive.
Yeah, great department. Both everyone. I mean, wherever you're gonna end up, anybody that's looking into it, find your local fire department. I don't care if you're not in Wisconsin, wherever you are. If you just stumbled upon this for some reason and you want to get into it, I mean, find the local volunteer. I'd say if there's one, in your area, find a local volunteer, because one, they'll know where the closest full time is, and two, they could be your stepping stone and your first step to getting there. So
Yeah.
find a local fire department, stop in. I mean, there's so many ways that you can get application to get in. Like, because everybody's willing to help out, and if you got a passion, you're going to do great in this career.
Yeah, even departments that are starting or have been running Explorer programs.
Yep.
If you're thinking about it, and you're not quite of age to be in an Explorer program or to become a member of a volunteer department, start that conversation early.
Yep.
If there's any indication, even if you got to bring mom, dad, or someone with you to, be that icebreaker in that conversation. Because when that time comes where you can enter in, that's an easy conversation and it's an easy grab then. Yeah, there's several different ways to break that ice, but it's all important. If you're thinking about it, start having that conversation. So, no fire department is going to turn you away, or
No.
If they are turning you away, they're doing something drastically wrong.
Absolutely. Well, again, thanks, Chief. Everybody, look forward. Next episode is going to be a little bit of a letdown because it's just Brennan and I. But we'll be recapping the year, setting up next year with all our guests. We'll have that guest list finalized by the time of the next episode, and that'll be coming out in December. This will be November 7th that this is coming out, so 2 weeks from now. So thank you very much for coming on. We kind of gave you a little heads up before we end all of our episodes the same. So I'll take it off, then Brennan, and then you'll send us away for the night. So thank you so much for coming on. As always, everybody, don't be a shitbag.
Thank you, Chief, for coming on, and don't be a shitbag.
Thank you for having me. Don't be a shitbag.
See ya.